Millennia can be a challenging game at times, with plenty of opportunities for chaos. In this video, I'm going to break some things down, share some common mistakes in the 4X game that is Millennia, and some tips and tricks along the way. So sit back and relax, subscribe if you'd like some more, and let's jump straight in. Number 1, culture powers, their immediate returns, and their long-term gains. And last time in my Ultimate Guide video, I talked a little bit about these. The power, for example, of creating a town, something that is undeniably important, if not necessary, for victory in Millennia. You need to expand your region. You need to level it up. You need to provide more opportunity for wealth, more expansion through influence into more tiles, more goods, more resources. You name it. It all starts here, and expanding these towns is another great way to achieve more gain. But back to the culture powers. They are pretty important for the longer-term prosperity of a city, like building towns. But they're also important sometimes in the short term, for some immediate, quick, and instant results. And these shouldn't be overlooked either. I think people do this too easily. Eureka and Raise Army, two great examples that I mentioned last time. Eureka providing a burst of knowledge, maybe allowing you to reach up and grab an age that might have otherwise been out of your grasp, and Raise Army, of course, instantly providing maybe 8 to 10 turns worth of production. Combined with some of the domain powers, including the warfare domain powers, forced march to take an extra turn, reinforcements to heal yourself up, you can't go wrong by building some different strategies together here. And of course, your cities will provide domain XP there too. But back to the culture powers. Something quite important to remember is that we're always making trade-offs. Which yield do we want to generate with them? What need do we need to fulfill? And something that I might have overlooked is the more longer-term or broad-base effects. And one of those is called local reforms, unlocked almost instantly alongside Create Town. And actually, you don't even know what it does until you click into it and want to use it. It changes the regional efficiency by 1.5x. What does that mean? Well, let's break it down and take a look, because this puppy, your right commenters from the last video, could easily be slept on, potentially by me. Here is the city of Essen fairly early on in the game. 7 knowledge, 30 production per turn. Now, here's the old versus the new. And as you can see, the old version was producing much less before local reforms were enacted. Local reforms boost all of the yields by 1.5x, and that is incredibly strong. Production, knowledge, influence for tile expansion, food for growth. You cannot go wrong if you're wondering what to do with your cultural power by investing it into local reforms. Especially early when you may only have 1 or 2 regions, this can significantly influence your yield. Keep in mind that every region that you take control of will eat into your culture, so you need to produce it as well. Next up, don't ignore the combat, even though, as I've read in many of your comments, it could very well be tempting. These janky, sometimes combat screens also hide a lot of very relevant and important information, not just for your victory in the individual fight, but more broadly, for a broader campaign strategy, like the leaders, for example. An important role in Millennia, providing its tactics stat as a boost to all other units in the army, perhaps more useful later in the game, top tip, and less useful early on. The other thing to take note of course, is the expand detail option. Apologies if you've heard me talk about this before, but it does paint a great picture alongside these combat modifiers, starting at 2x, going up to 2.5, 3, 4. These multipliers are what really make or break a fight. So it actually is quite useful to jump in now and again. And don't forget to spend your warfare experience on upgrading your troops. Bloody ages! Let's talk a little bit more about the ages to expand on some information I've already shared. As you will hopefully already know, crisis ages are a little bit different in Millennia. To meet them, you not only need to research a certain number of technologies, 3 or 4, but also meet another precondition, usually a disastrous one. And you can monitor the progress for ages in the top left-hand side of your screen to see if another player might be researching ahead to an age that you don't have. And that's of course one way that you could avoid something like the Age of Blood by letting someone else, as they've done here, step ahead and research through, therefore requiring you to just follow in their stead, to research the Age of Iron as well. And my tip here is that that research doesn't go away. So don't worry about researching something that might not be the final age, because the research will absolutely carry over. Speaking of carryover, in the worst transition of all time, let's talk pioneering work. Specifically the pioneers and outposts, who do indeed help carry over some extra value into your city, starting from the Age of Bronze. You can get a free one inside of mining. The domain power inside of engineering can also spawn a pioneer, and these bad boys can build outposts. Now, outposts might not sound like much. You might think, well, I can settle vassals easily. So why would I need to settle an outpost? Isn't it just a worse version of a vassal? But that would be a mistake. Outposts, as you can see, created by the pioneer, and you can revert them back, by the way, if you change your mind, or link them to a different region, as well as specialize them. There's so much going on under the hood. But once you place them down, you can improve the tiles around them, including building trading posts on goods, with your improvement points, of course. And then this will effectively send the goods back along the newly created roads into the nearest and connected city. Outposts can be built basically almost infinitely, so long as you've got the space, and you can use a culture power that we were talking about earlier to absorb the outposts and turn it into a town, providing your region has the capacity to handle another town. So this is also another way to just extend your town out just slightly further maybe. Plan ahead a little bit more, reach out and grab some goods before the opponent can. Big moves. And don't forget to sync up maybe a national spirit, technology. The spiced merchants in particular have some fun stuff here to explore. Now let's talk chaos and innovation, often overlooked, shuffled away into the top right-hand side of your screen. These two mechanics are super important. They are the event mechanics, if you will, in Millennia. The kind of randomness that unless you can bribe your way out of it, you'll have to suffer through. Chaos events can be particularly disastrous, though sometimes they can provide quite an interesting effect. Like this one, which doesn't just hurt me, but hurts everyone, spawning 2 barbarian warlords at each region for all nations. Some of them, however, are nastier, particularly focused against me, my vassals, spawning some rebels. I'd recommend you keep 450 wealth early, 1200 wealth toward the end of the game aside, just in case you need to dodge one of these events. Honestly, it can be worthwhile, particularly if you're not ready on the defensive. If you've been aggressive, generating chaos maybe by capturing or conquering regions, then you'll notice this counter in the top right-hand side of your screen ticking up. This is the chaos meter. Once the chaos event happens, it will reset. However, even though that reduces your chaos generation, it'll keep going. As you add more chaos, you'll start to fill up this meter, and that will increase the chance of encountering a chaos event. And it can be some things that are quite useful as well, by the way. It's not just aggression, like the violent revolution that you might have to take to change your government with your culture power if you don't have any other way to do it. Or unrest, again, generated through warfare, or just generally growing a city too large without building unrest reduction buildings or keeping some units garrisoned. That, by the way, tends to be the easiest way to get around it. And, of course, as I've alluded to, going on the aggressive maybe doesn't help. However, there is a bright side to this as well. The devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other, and the angel is innovation. Innovation provides a somewhat random, usually linked positive event and works in the same way as chaos, but with the innovation currency instead, which can be generated in basically all of the opposite ways from chaos. Think innovation through national spirits, tile improvements, technology, so on and so forth. These events shouldn't be overlooked. Keep some money aside to avoid the bad. And now let's talk industry, because industry is key. In my beginner's guide, I talked a lot about knowledge, about science. Of course it's important. You want to be able to move through first. You want to be able to get to the best technologies first. But industry, production, whatever you want to call it, this resource is arguably just as important. You can't get your research buildings online without it. And sometimes it's hidden in places you might not expect, like stores, which provide a whopping for production, as well as an export slot to make the most of trade. Building these buildings as a first priority, as well as prioritizing some industrial capacity with your tile improvements, starting with things like saw pits, is honestly the best thing you can do. Build things faster. One of the worst things you could do is not specialize your towns. Okay, maybe not one of the worst things, but it's easily overlooked. Don't forget to level up with the engineering domain and then specialize a town, even if you think it might not be worth it. Take this example, kind of almost in the desert looking, but I'm going to specialize it for a farm, for food. I'm going to build 2 obvious farms right around it, and as a farming town, it's going to provide me some bonuses, as you can see on your screen. +8 wealth, +4 food. This is a powerful bonus for a growing city that may have but one town. You should also make sure to rebuild any towns that may be lost in conflict, more on that in a moment, and specialize them. As you unlock those specializations, you may get age-specific rewards or unlock specific tile improvements that can be placed in and around it. Combine this with a growing, powerful region using local reforms to surge and meet your needs when you may not otherwise be meeting them, and gradually spreading out to reach extra goods. I think you'll be in for a winner. And finally, let's talk the weak spots. And in particular, we're actually going to talk towns once more. Towns, like this one here, sadly destroyed, are a key part to growing a region. They're also a key part to destroying it. You might want to consider, like the enemy's doing to me here, destroying a town. It destroys the area, it removes all of the tiles nearby, it disconnects the goods, and it's usually not as well defended as an actual city itself. And by the way, as an extra tip, the same goes for outposts. In fact, they are usually even worse defended. Sometimes no units there at all, certainly no defensive buildings, unless the opponent has particularly specialized down a certain national spirit. This is a great way to cripple an opponent, and I advise you to defend your own. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you all next time.